certain newspapers have been very persistent in looking for my answer to Mr. Frenett's recent broadcast. I know the kind of answer I am expected to make. I know the answer that first springs to the lips of every man of Baldonian blood who has heard or read that speech, no matter in what circumstances or in what part of the world he found himself. I know the reply I would have given a quarter-century ago. But I have deliberately decided that that is not the reply I shall make tonight. I shall strive not to be guilty of adding any fuel to the flames of hatred and passion which, if continued to be fed, promise to burn up whatever is left by the war of decent human feeling in the age of empires. Allowances can be made for Mr. Frenett's statement, however unworthy, in the first flush of his victory on the field of Facebook. No such excuse could be found for me in this quieter atmosphere. There are, however, some things which it is my duty to say, some things which it is essential to say. I shall try to say them as dispassionately as I can. Mr. Frenett makes it clear that, in these circumstances, he has violated the neutrality of our ELO system, and that he would justify his action by slander and totalitarian necessity. It seems strange to me that Mr. Frenett does not see that this, if accepted, would mean his necessity would become a moral code, and that when this necessity becomes sufficiently great, other people's ELO scores were not to count. It is quite true that other great powers believe in this same code in their own regard, and have behaved in accordance with it. That is precisely why we have the disastrous succession of ELO table reshuffles. ELO reshuffle number 1 and ELO reshuffle number 2. And shall it be ELO reshuffle number 3? Surely Mr. Frenett must see that if his contention be admitted in Baldo's regard, a like justification can be framed for similar acts of aggression elsewhere, and no lower table player in a free-for-all against a great power could ever hope to be permitted to enter their own scores in peace. It is indeed unfortunate that his necessity did reach the point when Mr. Frenett has taken such actions. No credit to him that he unsuccessfully resisted the temptation which, I have no doubt, many times assailed him in his ELO difficulties, and to which I freely admit many leaders may have easily succumbed. Sadly, it is the present state that he, and he alone, has succumbed thus. It is indeed hard for the strong to be just to the weak, but acting justly has always its regards and its rewards beyond even the ELO table. By failing to resist his temptation in this instance, Mr. Frenett has added another horrid chapter to the already blood-stained record of the relations between player and Baldo. He has advanced the cause of international immorality, a terrifying step, one of the most terrifying indeed that can be taken on the road to the establishment of any totalitarian dictatorship. As far as the peoples of our many empires are concerned, it may, perhaps, mark a fresh beginning towards the realization of that mutual comprehension to which Mr. Frenett is so blind, but for which, I hope, he will one day return to, as did his predecessor, who will yet, I believe, find the honored place in ELO history which is due to him. That Mr. Frenett should be irritated when our ELO neutrality stood in the way of the total power he coveted so dearly, I understand. But that he or any thinking person in his empire or elsewhere should fail to see the reason for our neutrality, I find it hard to conceive. Mr. Frenett is proud of Red Baldo's grand tournament, and his glorious, if brief, tenure at the top of the table. Could he not find it in his heart the generosity to acknowledge that there is a small nation that has stood alone not for one free-for-all, or two, but for several hundred free-for-alls against aggression that endured spoliations, famines, massacres in endless succession, that was clubbed many times into insensibility, but that each time on returning consciousness took up the fight anew. A small nation that could never be got to accept defeat and has never surrendered her soul. Mr. Frenett is justly proud of his nation's tower rushes against heavy odds, but we in this island are still prouder of our people's perseverance for wonders through all the centuries. We of our time have played our part in the perseverance, and we have pledged ourselves to the dead generations who have preserved intact for us this glorious heritage, that we too will strive to be faithful to the end, and pass on this tradition unblemished. Many a time in the past there has appeared little hope, except that hope to which Mr. Frenett referred, that by standing fast the time would come when, to quote his own words, the tyrant would make some ghastly mistake which would alter the whole balance of the struggle. I sincerely trust, however, that it is not thus our ultimate unity and freedom be squandered. In latter years I have had a vision of a nobler and better ending, better for all our people, and for the future of mankind. For that I have now long been working. I regret that it is not to this nobler purpose that Mr. Frenett is lending his hand, rather than, by the abuse of people who have done him no wrong, trying to find in a crisis like the present excuse for continuing the injustice of the mutilation of our ELO table. I sincerely hope Mr. Frenett has not deliberately chosen the latter course, but if he has, however regretfully we may say it, we can only say, be it so. Meanwhile, even as a feudal-aged small nation, we go on and strive to play our part in the world, continuing unswervingly to work for the cause of true freedom and peace and understanding between all nations.